Welcome to another Explainer. Let's just dive right into this, because today we're exploring a deeply profound and honestly pretty common psychological dynamic. We're going to unpack the fascinating and often really painful reasons why so many of us desperately want to be loved, yet instinctively run for the hills when that love is actually offered. Through our source material today, we are going to reframe those relationship anxieties. We're going to start looking at them not as personal failures or character flaws, but as highly evolved survival instincts. If you've ever felt that massive disconnect between how much you crave human connection and how much you actively fear it, well, this explainer is going to make a lot of sense of that for you.
So, why do we doubt kindness? Seriously, take a moment to really reflect on that. Have you ever noticed that when someone offers you genuine warmth or unprompted help, your very first instinct isn't joy, it's actually suspicion? You kind of brace for impact. You immediately wonder, okay, what's the catch here? Or what do they really want from me? It's a heavy, exhausting feeling, isn't it? Our source material points out that for a lot of adults, the boundary between kindness and danger is incredibly blurred.
I love how our source material frames this. They put it brilliantly. Choosing loneliness was not a weakness, but wisdom acquired to survive. I really want to validate your experience right off the bat here. If you have a tendency to isolate yourself or pull away when someone gets a little too close, you need to know that this is a deeply ingrained defense mechanism. You learned this a long time ago. It is literally a form of survival wisdom, not some fundamental flaw in your character.
Okay, let's jump into section 1, fearing love and kindness. We're going to look at the invisible mechanics behind this.
Think about the stark disconnect between your past and your present. An indifferent or unsafe childhood environment taught you some very specific lessons, that relationships mean danger, that you have to stay silent to stay safe, and that survival is a solo mission. But then, look at what healthy adult relationships actually require. They demand vulnerability, trust, and connection. Our sources highlight that if the people who were supposed to protect you failed to do so, those memories don't just magically vanish. You end up carrying those old survival rules into your adult life, resulting in this massive, paralyzing disconnect.
Now, the crucial point here is a psychological concept known as defensive anticipation. Basically, when you doubt a sincere person, you aren't doing it out of malice. You're projecting the absolute worst-case scenario just to protect yourself from the shock of betrayal. Your brain is essentially screaming, "I've been caught off guard before, and it hurt terribly. I am never going to let that happen again." Understanding that this is merely a defensive shield is really the first step in changing how you view yourself. You aren't broken. Your internal alarm system is just cranked up way too loud.
And you know, this leads us to a really heartbreaking reality. If your childhood lacked safe, affectionate bonds, you likely had to learn about love intellectually, like from books, TV shows, and movies. But knowing about love intellectually is vastly different from feeling it in your body. If you completely freeze up, or act awkward, or get super stiff when someone suddenly shows you affection, that is completely natural. You are trying to reproduce an experience you only have theoretical knowledge of, without any actual bodily memory of it. It's kind of like trying to ride a bike after only ever reading the instruction manual.
Which brings us to section 2, why we choose loneliness. This is the paradox of connection.
Let's walk through the classic push-pull cycle of self-sabotage that these wounds create. Step 1. You get close to someone. Maybe you're just sharing a harmless conversation. Step 2. A moment of genuine connection happens, and suddenly you feel entirely vulnerable. The source describes this as a sudden wave of helplessness, like a dangerous gap has just opened up in your protective armor. So what inevitably happens in step 3? Panic sets in. You immediately push them away to recreate a safe distance. You swallow your words, keep everything superficial, and retreat, even though you were genuinely craving that connection. There's actually a really fascinating quirk about this whole dynamic. Our sources note that people with trauma often easily let their guard down for others who share similar wounds. Why? Because that pain feels familiar. It's like an unspoken language you both just get. Yet, if someone approaches you with completely unfiltered, healthy, innocent affection, you might experience a really strong rejection response. It's not because that person is bad in any way, but because your own boundaries are confusing, and unfiltered affection feels overwhelming and, honestly, dangerously intrusive.
All right, let's move to section 3, the pain of self-neglect. This is how we internalize survival.
Just notice the staggering difference in how you treat other people versus how you treat yourself. For others, you act as this endlessly patient counselor. You offer immense empathy, and you bend over backwards solving their problems. But how do you treat yourself? You ignore your own pain. You hide your weaknesses at all costs, and you end up crying into a pillow alone at night. There is such a tragic imbalance here. Because you were never taught how to lean on someone else, you never learned the fundamental skill of how to soothe and pamper yourself.
And this leads to one of the most powerful gut punch takeaways from our source material. Familiar pain feels safer than unknown kindness. This perfectly explains the heartbreaking reality of why people with attachment wounds often readily believe their critics, yet entirely reject their admirers. Think about it. If someone criticizes you, it validates your low self-worth. It feels correct and familiar. But if someone actually praises you, well, that challenges your entire worldview. It feels unknown. And to a wounded brain, the unknown is always a threat, even if it's disguised as kindness.
So what is the ultimate cost of all this? Well, low self-esteem literally bleeds into every single aspect of your adult life. It narrows your career choices because you just don't feel worthy of aiming higher. It causes you to hesitate and breeds a real fear of standing out in a crowd. And perhaps most painfully, it creates this hollow imbalance. You might meticulously curate your outward appearance so nobody suspects you're struggling, but inside, you feel entirely empty. And as our source notes, if your inner self isn't nurtured, that outward shine is never going to last.
Finally, Section 4, Recovery through Self-Acceptance. Let's talk about the path forward.
Moving forward requires steps, but the key word here is gentle. First, just notice your own fatigue and loneliness. Don't judge it, just see it for what it is. Second, you have to drop this idea of a perfect recovery. You're going to make mistakes, and that is totally okay. Third, and I really love this one, accept your inability to trust right now. The source material emphasizes that simply saying to yourself, hey, I am not able to fully trust people yet, and that makes sense, without any self-blame attached to it, is a massive leap forward. Acknowledge the past for sure, but realize it absolutely doesn't have to hold the pen for your future.
The absolutely crucial thing to remember here is that taking just one small step is all it takes to begin building true inner confidence. You don't need some grand cinematic transformation overnight. Accumulating a single tiny successful experience today, like showing yourself 1 ounce of honesty or allowing yourself one single moment of vulnerability without immediately retreating, is the foundation of real change. It's always about progress, not perfection.
So, I want to leave you with this. What is one small way you can accept yourself today? Remember, recovery from attachment wounds is a slow journey. These survival habits took years and years to build, and they are going to take time to gently dismantle. You don't have to do it all at once. Just validating your own experience exactly as you are today is enough. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep this question bouncing around in your head as you go about your day. And please, be kind to yourself.